Kurdistan's regional government says it's going ahead with plans to hold a referendum on independence. But what are the risks of this strategy? And what will an independent Kurdish state mean for Iraq and the region? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. The date is set, September 25th, no change. Those were the words of Zebari, an advisor to the president of the Kurdistan Regional Government in northern Iraq. It was in response to a request by US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson to postpone the independence referendum during a telephone call on Thursday. Tillerson told Masoud Barzani he favours dialogue instead between the Kurdish region and the Iraqi government. The US and other Western nations are worried the vote could lead to renewed conflict with the Iraqi government in Baghdad and distract the Kurds from fighting ISIL. Turkey, Iran and Syria, which also have large Kurdish populations, all oppose an independent Kurdish state. And Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi says it's not in the interest of the Kurdish region or Iraq. But Barzani insists, and I quote, "The people of Kurdistan region expect guarantees and alternatives for their future." Iraq's northern Kurdish region has been relatively autonomous since 1991, with its own federal state, an army and parliament. In 2005, an overwhelming majority of 98% of voters opted for independence in a referendum, but that vote never happened. September's referendum will be different. It will be formally held by the Kurdistan Regional Government and various political parties, and it will be binding. Despite this, some Kurds argue a bid for independence is premature because Kurdish unity is needed first. The Kurds have wanted an independent state since the end of World War I, when the colonial powers divided up the Middle East. Their territory was split between Iraq, Syria, Turkey and Iran, where around 25 to 30 million Kurds now live. Iraqi Kurds are mainly in the north. In 2014, Kurdish Peshmerga forces started fighting ISIL in Kirkuk. The disputed area will be included in the referendum, with the Kurds hoping to legitimize their claim over the oil-rich territory. In Syria, US-backed Kurds, known as the Syrian Democratic Forces, have been fighting ISIL in the north. Syrian Kurds aim for a self-declared autonomous region known as Rojava. Meanwhile, Turkey has been attacking the Kurdish Popular Protection Unit, or the YPG, in northern Syria. Turkey views it as an extension of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK. And in Iran, Kurds make up around 10% of the population. Let's bring in our panel. Joining from Erbil, we have Dindar Zebari, Deputy Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government. In Baghdad, Ahmed Rushdie, Director of the House of Iraqi Expertise Foundation. And in Erbil, we have Dilawar Aladeens, President of the Middle East Institute. Welcome to you all. Let's start with Mr. Zebari first. Mr. Zebari, why is this referendum so important right now? Why not delay this referendum like the Americans would like you to do?
There have been several facts, and I believe the major one is the outcome of the ISIL defeat and the future challenges that throughout the experience of many years, KRG forces, Peshmerga forces have protected Kurdistan region. This might be one of those reasons that we feel secure, we will feel protected, probably in a new format which is fully protected and of course recognized internationally. Being part of the failure state for years in terms of security, in terms of construction, and in terms of success of the governing system, in terms of power sharing, in terms of political consensus, and certainly the peaceful coexistence, Iraq has failed. And I believe the latest atrocities by ISIL is a clear evidence on that.
So do you think independence will give you the security that you clearly desire? I mean, is this driven by security needs, or is this driven by the needs and the wishes of the Kurdish people?
Certainly, certainly it has to be. It must be security fully protected, and security will have to be a main and objective. And I think this is what throughout the experience of 90s and following 2003, the KRG region has been stable and secure. But of course, aspiration of the Kurds for independent Kurdistan, no one can deny that. It is an aspiration of the people of Kurdistan throughout the revolution and history of resistance to following Iraqi regimes, beginning of the state of Iraq and throughout the history. And I have to say, 1991 uprising of the Kurdish people or northern part of the country, again, has been another clear example that the international community not only protected the Kurds from Baghdad, but of course has given full support for the progress as well as construction and as well as the peaceful coexistence and survive policy. That's why it had been a successful example even of UN resolutions or UN famous oil for food program, and later in the defeat of regime of Ba'ath or Saddam Hussein, example of KRG has been a clear success for the coalition as well as for Iraqi opposition. All different, I have to say, all different.
You talk about the aspirations of the Kurdish people, but the Kurdish people aren't united completely. Your parliament hasn't met since 2015. You have political problems within the Kurdish Regional Government itself. Are you united enough to be able to deliver on something like a referendum, and are you prepared enough?
Yeah, no political party or no institution in the region, as well as no individual in Kurdistan region, has been anti-referendum or anti-voice of independence in Kurdistan. What has been going on so far is the political process and transition of power, and of course consensus among different political parties. In all different countries around the world, this process has been somehow up and down. But I believe the unity of the Kurds for independence is valid. And I believe also that the Kurdistan Regional Government has been very much firm on that throughout the High Committee of Referendum that has been chaired by President Barzani, and of course consists of major political parties as well as all different ethnicities and communities in Kurdistan region. This process has been a united process, has been a formal process, fully supported by administration as well as by political parties within the region and the political process.
Let's bring in Mr. Rushdie here. Mr. Rushdie, you're in Baghdad right now. You're watching this. What is Baghdad's view on this Kurdish referendum?
Well, there are so many questions need to be answered by the Kurdish people, by the Kurdish authorities. Number one, if they are united, so why there is no KRG parliament? Why there is no committee already have been authorized by the KRG parliament to do the referendum? And there are also, if the referendum will happen, it means that independence, if independence, should KRG want the 17% from Iraq, the budget from Iraq, from the Iraqi government? And also, there are so many important questions concerning regional acceptance for such kind of independence, and which also pushing the Iraqi government toward just dislike what's happening in the KRG. And the most important thing is what are the consequences of the referendum? What should we see after the referendum? If there is a real unity, Kurdish unity, it's supposed to be there will be a real standardized pathway for the independence of Kurdistan. But what we are seeing now in the Middle East, there are so many things happen after the referendum ended with a civil war. Let's see, let's talk about Sudan, what's happened in south of Sudan. Because the agreement between the central government and the south of Sudan, it was a peaceful agreement, and it was not concerning the two main tribes that it's supposed to be also has some sort of dispute between them. Look what's happening now, a civil war in South Sudan.
Let me just interrupt you there, just for 1 second, Mr. Rushdie. Let me just interrupt you there. Mr. Zebari has said very clearly, this is about Kurdish security, that he will be able to protect his own nation because Baghdad has failed him. What did the Iraqi government think of that?
Well, the Iraqi government actually thinks that it's not legitimate. It needs the proof, or let's say the acceptance of the parliament itself, because the parliament is the legitimate institute that it's supposed to be had such kind of decisions, just like the referendum to be held at September. So, and also they have so many concerns about what's going to happen for the disputed area, especially the disputed area contain Arabs, Kurds, Turkmen, and so on. So there are so many issues it's supposed to be on the table to be negotiated. By the way, there is a delegate from Kurdistan came to Baghdad. It's supposed to be came to Baghdad to negotiate all these things. But at the same time, we have a problem named as Kirkuk. So if we're going to talk about Kurdistan and the referendum and the independence, so Kirkuk it's supposed to be belongs to Kurdistan or to the central government. If it belongs to Kurdistan, so who's gonna control Kirkuk? It's Erbil or Sulaymaniyah. So I think the consequences of the referendum, it's 50-50. We're gonna say, yeah, maybe it's gonna protect Kurdistan, but at the same time, it will show us some sort of dispute, major disputes about oil, about financial things. We know that Kurdistan now has a financial crisis.
Let's bring in Mr. Dilawar Al-Aladeen from Erbil as well. You've been listening to the two other guests here. Let's just talk about this idea of Kirkuk. It seems to be very controversial. Whose territory is that, and why is it so important?
Thank you very much. I have to say that I have to speak as an academic and impartial about this. And we have studied Kirkuk and disputed territories, as well as the claims of Baghdad and Erbil. I think this is a very good example of how the political elite in Iraq have been completely disengaged with each other, invested very little in dialogue, in thinking about peace and stability in the long term, and more importantly, in implementing the constitution and securing, or at least investing in the coexistence of the communities together. So whether you talk about Kirkuk or any other area, or even coexistence between Erbil and Baghdad under, within the boundaries of one state. So essentially, there is a way, there is a mechanism of dealing with these conflicts. However, there have been very little in confidence building between them, in dialogue and in proper negotiation. So now everybody's got their point of view. They have all the right reasons, but sometimes do the wrong thing. If you look at the big picture, you will find that neither Baghdad nor Erbil have invested enough in this governing together, in this coexistence. So on one hand, Baghdad has failed over the years to embrace the Kurds and really share power with them, make them full owners and citizens. But equally, the Kurdish leaders have really not done enough to invest in Baghdad and share the ownership of it and feel like they're at home. Eventually, they became like guests in Baghdad. And of course, if you look at the current government in Baghdad, they have been very sensible in reaching out to all Iraqi components, including the Kurds, in trying to negotiate every problem and build bridges. But what they have failed to do is to make up for the past, is really, other than stabilizing Iraq and getting everyone focused on ISIS war, other than that, they have failed to repair the damage done by the previous government. And of course, when there was a gap created between Baghdad and Erbil and they diverged and drifted, it became irreversible. So here we're talking about a trend that has reached beyond the point of repair or beyond the point of reversibility. So even here now, people are still not taking care of, or at least not doing enough to engage in a good dialogue that will lead to an amicable win-win situation.
That's a very interesting point.
Whether the Kurds stay within the...
That's a very interesting point. I'd just like to bring in
whether the
Mr.
Kurds
Zebari
stay within the...
For just one second. Let me bring in Mr. Zebari here. You've heard what the two guests have had to say. And not enough has been done to forge the Republic of Iraq's unity. This is a clear issue that needs to be discussed. I mean, how do you feel about that accusation that enough hasn't been done, that failures have been made, and this is why you're at the stage now where you want independence, because you haven't been good guests in your own country, as it were?
Yeah, I fully agree with this vision or this, let's say, sort of assessment. Iraq has failed throughout 2003 until now in terms of the simple articles of the unification of process in terms of the consensus with KRG and also in terms of the implementation of the Iraqi articles of the constitution. More than 50 Iraqi articles so far has been abandoned and denied. In terms of 140 article, which is a very a normal process of supported fully by United Nations, also by UNAMI in 2007 to be implemented, but so far after many years Iraq has deliberately denied the implementation of issue of disputed areas, so we call Kurdistan areas outside the region. Failure of Baghdad in terms of the implementation, not commitment of Baghdad in terms of the welfare of the KRG people, in terms of the cut of budget since 2014. Iraq has cut the budget of the people of Kurdistan, and Iraqi Kurdistan or Kurdistan region so far goes under a very huge pressure and catastrophic situation in terms of the financial situation, and of course the crisis has been escalated further. Beyond that also we do not see, frankly, as being part of Iraq as a state, any proper commitment being in terms of constitution, in terms of the Iraqi procedures or inclusion of the Iraqi Kurdistan within the full political process in Baghdad. This is all has led to the complete dissatisfaction of the KRG administration. And in terms of dialogue, there have been dozens of dialogue, dozens of the delegations on oil and gas. In 2007, the final draft have been ready to be finalized, completely denied and breached by Baghdad in terms of the further dialogue.
So you've set your
we have reached
stall
a
out
situation and a stage that no dialogue can be successful with Baghdad without international intervention.
You've set your stall out very clearly there. Mr. Zebari, you've made your case very clearly there. Let me just come back to Mr. Rushdie. You've heard what Mr. Zebari had to say. This is about security. It's about the economics of all of this. But let's be completely honest. Turkey, Syria, Iran aren't going to allow a Kurdish state. Is Baghdad looking to those three countries as much as they can, particularly with the problems of the region, to try and stop any move for an independent Kurdistan, or is this an internal Iraqi issue?
Well, let's be honest, what's happened in 2014 from stopping the budget for Kurdistan, it's more or less it's the concerning of the former Prime Minister, Mr. Maliki, and all the accusations about not trusting the Iraqi government. It's more connected to that period. It's rather than this period, which is headed by Haider al-Abadi. And al-Abadi has a very good connections, very good relations with KRG, with Mr. Masoud, with President Masoud. But at the same time, we must know also all these allegations, it's not happened by the KRG, it's more by the KDB rather than the PUK. And we know that Soleimani has good relations with Baghdad rather than Erbil, which means that we are not seeing a unified Kurdish situation in a way that at the end it will solve problems with Baghdad. But I think what's happening now, for all the negotiations happening with Mr. Abadi, it's more positive than what's happened before. And all these things all these delegations that came to Baghdad reached to some sort of let's say, MOH, a memo of understanding to what's the future between Baghdad and Erbil. And let's be honest, it looks like even in the next elections, they are with the same line. President Masoud with Haider al-Abadi, with Mr. Abadi, and even Ayad Allawi, and there are so many, and maybe Muqtada al-Sadr, and so on. So it looks like there is a line of understanding between those individuals, which means that even the referendum itself, Mr. Abadi said it's not for the benefit of the Kurds.
Let's bring in Mr. Aladeens here. You've heard what everybody's had to say. Is this a way then, this referendum, instead of being a serious thing about Kurdish independence, is this just another political tool to put pressure on Baghdad to come to some sort of negotiation and a negotiated settlement? Or is this a very serious thing that may well lead to the creation of an independent Kurdistan?
Well, this is politics. It's a little bit of everything. On one hand, it is a very serious issue because it does reflect the aspiration of the majority of the Kurds and Kurdistani people, i.e. people who live in Kurdistan, they don't have to be Kurds. But of course, it also can be a political tool or a political opportunity and a card used for further negotiation. You mentioned the bigger picture and the bigger dynamics. One has to, and also the fact that a lot of regional and international powers are unlikely to support. You will have to realize that the regional powers, as well as global ones, have been successful throughout the decades to contain Kurdish ambition and prevent them from going any further. But now the dynamics have changed. The entire Middle East dynamics of power, local, regional, and global actors are intertwined in a way. They are creating opportunities as well as threats. But every country currently expressing their opposition or view is based on their national security interest. Now, at the moment, the best bet for the Kurds is to actually negotiate separation or inclusion with Baghdad. If Baghdad agrees to the Kurdish demands, whether that is independence or not, then the rest of the countries will have no claim. They have no way of stopping that. Even the global powers, they would listen to Baghdad. So the best thing is for Baghdad or Erbil to negotiate something. The question if I was going to just to end with saying that if Baghdad and Erbil ask themselves the one big question, if they stay together, can they actually do enough to forever live in harmony and have a good system of governance and share power and coexistence leading to prosperity and democracy? If not, can they actually sustain themselves and be good neighbors afterwards and then still behave as though they are still together because they are likely to stay together for millennia? Now, at the moment, everybody's handling this affair in a tough way, in a difficult way, that they are not resorting to a very well-studied and negotiated roadmap. So now, with this delegation going to Baghdad, I'm sure the Baghdad leaders, the majority are being very sensible. They would say something like, okay, let's talk about the nitty-gritties. Although this is not constitutional, but equally, you should be asking for what will keep you within the boundaries of a nation, that we together build our nation. What most people are insisting upon is the integrity of a state.
Let's just hear from Mr. Zebari now. You've heard of this, the regional implications for what is going on. Are Turkey, Iran, Syria, are these people that are going to be willing partners for a Kurdish independent state?
Yeah. In 1992, when Kurdistan region has been liberated, protected by no-fly zone, Baghdad rejected the call of the Kurdistan Regional Parliament as referendum as federalism for the region, or federation for the region, immediately after 24 hours. Iran and Turkey as well, for years, have been putting a lot of challenges in terms of the stability of the region. But lately, after years, Turkey has became a great and a significant partner, both economically as well as in terms of the reconstruction of the region. And today, the biggest exit of KRG throughout the region. Iran also has been successful in terms of KRG has been successful in its relationship with Iran. Both capitals, Tehran and Ankara, have recognized the Kurdistan Regional Government. And of course, both of the capitals, Tehran has opened Kurdistan representation office in Tehran. So throughout the years, this relationship has changed. And I believe KRG has proved to neighboring countries it has been a fact of stability to most of those challenges and of course concerns.
Mrs. Zebari, we're going to have to leave it there now. We've come to the end of the program. We've come to the end of the program. Incredibly interesting what you're saying. You're saying that the Turks and the Iranians are ready for an independent Kurdish state. Clearly, that's something that our other guests have opinions on as well. Sadly, we are going to have to leave it there. So I want to thank all our guests, Dindar Zebari, Ahmed Rashdi and Dilawar Aladeens, and thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join in the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the whole team here, bye for now.